Okay, this will be our first video on leading, managing, and following for our leadership course. I have had such difficulty today. My original method that I had planned on using for recording has acted up, and I thought I was recording and it wasn't recording, so I am going to try to utilize this source and get this first chapter done. Actually, you have 9 chapters that you'll be tested over. Your first exam is on Monday, May 18th. The exams are now being proctored by Miss Stacy, and it looks like on the calendar she has your exams at 8, whereas last rotation in NR 2600 I tried to schedule them at 9 o'clock. I thought it was a bit early, working from home, to be up and trying to get ready to take an exam at 8 a.m. So I will reach out to her and ask that she send you guys an email clarifying exactly what her expectations are. I think I sent you an email on today stating that, but I'm a bit drained and frustrated at this point. I can't believe that I'm back at square one, starting over again, because my method that I was utilizing wasn't working. So I'm gonna try to get through this as fast as I can, but not where you don't understand it, but not try to take very long uploading these PowerPoints. I had originally uploaded chapters to the cams out of edition 7, because when I went through that edition, the PowerPoints that they sent me were much shorter than those from edition 6. However, they didn't send any teaching notes with edition 7, as well as the edition 7. Well, when thinking about it, I was not sure exactly how many students had the 7th edition book. When Webster uploaded the reading or book list, we were told that anytime a new edition comes out, they have to add that edition to the book list. Had I known ahead of time they were putting 7, I would have emailed you guys and let you know that we were still lecturing out of 6, that all of our exams and everything have been created from edition 6. So today I went ahead and uploaded the chapters for edition 6. Now, edition 6 chapters are not individualized like chapter 7. You have a combination of chapters per uploading. For example, the first upload contains chapter 1, 2, 18, 3, and 4. However, chapter 2 will not be included. And with the next one, where we have 5, 6, 7, and 8, only chapter 5 and 8 out of that uploading. So overall, you will have all of the chapters from the 6th edition uploaded, but they are just not in exact sequence as to the way you will be tested over the chapters. They are kind of combined, so you'll have to go through and select which PowerPoints that you need to look at for this exam. So with that said, I'm going to move on to our next. Oh, I was going to send you guys an email because a student called and said there was some confusion as to how you guys were supposed to be following the schedule. Well, the calendar is for leadership. The capstone is for ATI. Capstone does not have any grades connected to leadership. There are no grades for capstones. However, it is required by ATI that you complete the capstone before you can go into that last 2 weeks before you graduate. So they are tracking that information. But what I was told was that after you guys did the orientation to ATI, it generated you a schedule, but the schedule was not as detailed as the schedule that ATI had given us. For example, it had for your first week fundamentals is open May 7th through May 17th. If you look at what we uploaded for you from ATI to CAMS, it is broken down a little bit more specific. It has the content that you review and what week you review it. Then it has the content module that you're supposed to look at. And the first one is fundamentals. Then it has your assignment due date, which for fundamentals, your assignment due date is tomorrow. Then it has a post assignment date, meaning they want you to post your assignment. And that's dated on 5/17. So I have tried to reach out to ATI to get a better clarification. I don't know if those IT people or whomever are out of the office. I don't know if it's a 9-to-5 job or whatever, but I was not able to get through to ATI. I was on hold for so long. So I've hung up and tried to upload another PowerPoint because I have a lot on my plate, and this time you guys gonna really have to utilize your book and do some reading. Miss Willis wants your 4-week class uploaded into 2 weeks, as you can see on your calendar. Everything, all of the lectures are up on the first 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks, all you have is testing. If you look on the documents that's uploaded to CAMS, you have notes and handouts to all of these lectures or these concepts already. They are not just notes for NR 2800, but they are notes that you can utilize to study for NCLEX. A lot of them have little smiley faces by them. It also has NCLEX information. Those are the things you really need to zero in on. Again, they will help you with the course as well as this information in ATI and going forward on the NCLEX. So our chapter 1 is leading, managing, and following. Again, this chapter particularly is getting you familiarized with the different terminology and what they mean, and you need to be able to differentiate the difference between leadership and management. As with any chapter, we always have objectives. We want to relate leadership and other organizational theories to behaviors that serve the role and functions of professional nursing. We want to link self-knowledge and emotional intelligence in the constructive use of power and influence and the exercise of authority and responsibility needed for professional practice. It also says that we want to develop strength in bringing a professional nursing lens to the interprofessional team while advocating for quality and safety. And you know, safety is your middle name in a nursing and NCLEX world. Safety, safety, safety. And last, we want to improve decision making when acting as a leader, manager, or follower by enlarging the view of the individual, family, or community being cared for to include the social network and organizational context for outcomes achievements. So again, I think chapter 6 is a little the 6th edition book is a little wordy. However, I think the 7th edition is in relationship to the PowerPoints is more of an overview. So whichever one you need that best suits your learning style, both of them are there for you. So, and again, regardless of which one that you use, as you go through the PowerPoint, you need to open up your book and highlight that information, because I am doing an overview. I will not be reading everything verbatim because you have your book to do that. So again, I will be touching on what are the most important concepts, and again, you can go through your book as you go through the PowerPoint, and any additional information that you need is right there in your book that you can read it as you go along. So the triple aim in healthcare, that triple aim in healthcare, that is pretty much the first page in your chapter 6 edition. I have uploaded a conversion table. So if I'm referring to something in a 6th edition, it'll tell you where it is in a 7th edition. And if you got the 7th edition, vice versa, it'll tell you where that's located in the 6th edition. So the triple aim in healthcare, that particular term was coined by the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, which is IHI, and that triple aim relates to these three things: access, quality, and cost of care. It says here that the profession of nursing constitutes the backbone of the healthcare system, both in numbers and its span across the clinical spectrum, and that two major developments reveal the central nature of nursing to health and well-being of citizens, and that is the public acknowledgement of nursing, which is in the Landmark Institute of Medicine report. And that report is entitled The Future of Nursing, Leading Change, Advocating Health. And the second development is or was the passage of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. So these two things together, they are documentation that emphasizes that nurses must lead, manage, and collaboratively follow, not in the traditional sense of following orders or clinical protocols for care, but as active collaborators with other members of the health team and with those being served. So when it talks about access, it states that nurses who practice in expanded roles help solve access to care in practice settings beyond the traditional hospital and ambulatory centers. Increasingly, all nurse practice in the Midwest, it is an array of settings that any healthcare worker can be involved in, and that includes like school clinics, public health, palliation, hospice and home care, urgent care, and we know in our short-term hospitals, short-term acute care, which is a STAC hospital, we have ICUs, emergency room, med surge. Again, we got home health nursing, you got pediatric nursing, we got psychiatric nursing. It is so many areas of nursing that you can go in with this one degree. And because of us being involved in all of these different areas, it has helped a lot with the access to health care. And it also talks about that many states now allow advanced practice nurses, which are our nurse practitioners, allow them the freedom to practice independently, because initially they had to work under physician. Everything had to be okay through the physician. And not to say that they don't work with the physician, they do, but they are able to have their own office, their own clinical hours, their own appointment times, as well as they are directly reimbursed now, when before they had to get their pay through the physician. So they get direct reimbursement through Medicare, Medicaid, just like the physician. So it's so easy now for the nurse practitioner to have her own practice. As access increases, nurses are also vigilant in delivering care that is scientific, state-of-the-art, and sensitive to patient needs, collectively creating a quality experience. Beyond respectful treatment, patients want their values and beliefs accommodated in partnership with their care team. Lastly, the triple aim includes impacting the cost of healthcare, as costs have mounted and even destabilized economics worldwide. You know, we have technology, institutional care, supplies, human resource. All these requirements place a staggering cost burden on individuals and businesses as well. And we can truly see that right now with COVID-19 going on, with all of the furloughs that we are having from jobs. Physicians are being laid off, nurses are being laid off, a lot of things are closing. We're not even able to go out and eat in a restaurant right now. So a lot of businesses are losing money, and it is really having a worldwide economic impact. So you can read in detail on page 3 about the access, quality, and cost of care. So when we're talking about the actual definitions and getting an understanding of what we're talking about, as you can see here, leadership is the use of individual traits and abilities to interpret an emerging situation and to address the situation in the absence of a script or defined plan. This definition of leadership focuses on dealing with unknown situations, it gives you the opportunity to look at patient care and administrative situations that will require the use of leadership skills. And as we go through this particular chapter, there is a box that gives you traits of a good leader and a good manager. Management is the act of any individual who guides others through a series of routines, procedures, or practice guidelines. In comparison to leadership, management has a greater emphasis on following protocols and procedures, and managing can also refer to control of one's own individual work and energies. And again, we always want to discuss patient care and administrative situations that require the use of management skills. And now our next is followership. Followership is the optimal use of personal attributes in a team situation while acquiescing, if I pronounce that right, to a peer who is leading or managing to ensure the best clinical decision making and actions are taken to achieve clinical or organizational outcomes. Now, followership requires active engagement and preparation by group members. Following is just as accountable as leading or managing. You cannot have a good leader or manager without good followers. So we always want to discuss patient care and administrative situations where followership can improve outcomes, meaning patient and organizational outcomes. There is an exercise in your book, exercise 1-1, that can demonstrate the use of leading, managing, and following at the same time. And I'm sorry, I'm flipping over to look at that book, look in the book to tell you where that is, on what page that is. And it says that exercise is 1-1, and I was trying to make sure that I had the right box, because you have different boxes depending on if it's a table or what have you. But 1-1, box 1-1 is actually on the bottom of page 5 in your book, and it goes through these definitions. And then what I like about this 6th edition book, and I would have lectured from the 7th edition book, but somehow mysteriously my 7th edition brand new book has disappeared. I have searched high and low, so I don't know if somebody decided to borrow my book. I don't know if I left it laying somewhere and somebody picked it up, but I have not been able to find it, and nor could I get a actual book in hand in time for the class. They wanted to send me an ebook, which I do not like ebooks, but that's what they offered. So because all the exams and everything have been taken from edition 6, I went ahead and chose to lecture from edition 6 and just upload the conversion table. So if you look at box 1-1 at the bottom of page 5, it shows desired attributes of leaders, managers, and followers, and I will leave that up to you to read that box. Next, we talk about possession. Well, I'm sorry. My thing is a little tilted there. Trying to adjust it, hoping it don't fall off here, because I have a contraption set up here trying to get this done. So is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is the possession of social skills, interpersonal competence, psychological maturity, and emotional awareness that's devoted to helping people work well together. Emotional intelligence is what helps people see others in a positive light. For example, two managers could reach the same decision and present the idea to two groups. The one with the skills inherent in emotional intelligence is likely to be perceived in more positive terms, even though the outcome may be the same. So to be emotionally intelligent, they want you to consider these next 5 domains. And one is having self-awareness. I probably have to adjust this so you can see the very last one, because trying to get the title at the top, it kind of cuts out the bottom, so I may have to adjust it just so you can see the last one. But having self-awareness means that you can identify the emotions you are feeling and that you know how they are altering your perceptions. You also can have managing emotions is the next one, and that means that the negative emotions such as anger, fear, and passive aggressiveness are avoided. Next, motivating self suggests that we would be inwardly rather than externally driven. And then being empathetic, that suggests that we value differences in viewpoints and we don't side with one group versus another. And last but not least is handling relationship, and that means that you are socially appropriate. So with this emotional intelligence, I want to emphasize that we also need to demonstrate in facilitating the development of these domains in other people as well. You know, where you have a younger nurse or a newer nurse coming along, you're a more seasoned nurse, you want to help develop these 5 domains in that person as well. So this particular slide, you can find this slide, and looking at it and trying to record it through here, it does not look good. So again, all this is that box that I was telling you about, that's at the bottom of page 5 in your book. This is the box that has attributes of, well, wait a minute, attributes of leaders and managers. And I'm trying to make sure, because the box at the bottom, use focus in, yes, in your book is entitled desired attributes of leaders, managers, and followers, whereas this particular slide just says attributes of leaders and managers. But looking in the book and looking at this, I'm reading them, trying to read them and talk to you at the same time, and I'm sorry, but they are a little different. Now the first one, 1, 2, 3, accept, identify, deal, demonstrate, examine, trustworthy, motivate. Well, they the same. The words might vary just a tiny bit, starting at the beginning of the sentence. For example, where it's down and says are trustworthy and handle information from various sources with respect for the source. In the book, it says be trustworthy and handle information from various sources with respect for the source. So I'm confident that they do say the same thing in box 1-1, although this particular slide may be worded just a little different. Next is our theoretical basis, and I'm sorry, I have to adjust this now and then so you can see the whole thing. And under theoretical basis, we have two concepts under that theoretical basis, and that is leadership and motivation. And Bly and Koziak, they have been, I guess, the author or theorists that have divided this particular theory about leading, managing, and following into these two categories. And again, that first category is the leadership theories, and the second one is going to be the motivational theories. So in the leadership theories, you have, let me just adjust it because there's another one at the bottom you can't see. Now that you can see, that's leadership theories. And you have trait, style, situational, contingency, and transformational. And as we go through these, the next few slides are actually boxes out of the book with this information condensed. And this one is talking about the trait theories, which was the first one listed. Now, as you go through your book, this particular slide is located on page 9 in your book. However, as you actually the all of the theory and motivational are kind of back to back, but as you go through your book, it can give you a little bit more detail, because just as it has it, the box information, they also have information that's a little bit more detailed in the word contents of the book. So with the trait theories, it was first studied from 1900 to 1950. These theories are sometimes referred to as the great man theory from Aristotle's philosophy, extolling the virtue of being born with leadership traits. Stockdale in 1948 is usually accredited as the pioneer in this school of thoughts. Excuse me. The key idea behind the traits theory is leaders have a certain set of physical and emotional characteristics that are crucial for inspiring others toward a common goal. Some theorists believe that traits are innate, meaning you are born with them, and cannot be learned. Others believe that leadership traits can be developed in each individual. And in regard to application to practice, self-awareness of traits is useful in self-development, especially when you're trying to develop assertiveness, really trying to figure out who you are, and in seeking employment that matches your traits. You know, and they look at traits like your drive, your motivation, your integrity, your confidence, your cognitive ability, and your task knowledge. And as you know, in nursing, all of those are included in the nursing field. The next was the styles theory, and it's sometimes referred to as group and exchange theories of leadership. Style theories were derived in the mid-1950s because of the limitations of the trait theory, and the key contributors to this particular research were Shortle and Stockdale and Likert. And if you know, Likert has done a lot, because a lot of times when we're doing evaluations, we use a Likert scale. So he's been instrumental in a lot of educational processes. So the idea behind the styles theory is style theories focus on what leaders do in relational and contextual terms, and the achievement of satisfactory performance measures requires supervisors to pursue effective relationships with their subordinates while comprehending the factors in the work environment that influence outcomes. And application to practice. To understand style, leaders need to obtain feedback from followers, superiors, and peers, such as through the managerial grid instrument, which was developed by Blake and Morton in 1985. Employee-centered leaders tend to be the leaders most able to achieve effective work environments and productivity. So this is the way that this one reads. I really do not want to go through this PowerPoint reading each one of these boxes, because this box is listed in your book, and if you can see it on the slide, you can go through, but just know that this is one of the theories in those 4 that are listed under the traits theory. So you have the traits theory, the styles theory, the situational, which is our next one. You have the situational contingency theory, and that theories emerged like in the 1960s, early 70s to mid 70s, and they believe that leadership effectiveness depends on the relationships among 1, the leader's task at hand, 2, his or her interpersonal skills, and 3, the favorableness of the work situation. So again, look at that, apply the key ideas, looking at those 3 factors that they consider to be critical in that key idea, and then the example they give in regard to application to practice. And the last of the leadership theories is the transformational theories. Now this, I think, is, let me see if I can get the whole thing on there. It's a little bit, there you go. So the transformational theory arose late in the past millennium, when globalization and other factors caused organizations to fundamentally reestablish themselves. Many of these attempts were failure, but great attention was given to those leaders who effectively transformed structures, human resources, and profitability balance with quality. And they attribute Bass, Bennis, and Nanas, Tiki, and Devana are the ones that are commonly associated with the study of transformational theory. And if you read into that, when you look at the key idea, I know personally I would love to work under a transformational leader. Transformational leadership refers to a process whereby the leader attends to the needs and motives of followers so that the interaction raises each to high levels of motivation and morality. The leader is a role model who inspires followers through displayed optimism, provides intellectual stimulation, and encourages followers' creativity. And again, I would love to work under transformational leader, and I'll go ahead and read the application to practice for this one because I am so fond of this particular theory. Transformed organizations are responsive to customer needs. They are morally and ethically intact. They promote employee development and encourage self-management. Nurse leaders with transformational characteristics experiment with systems redesign. They empower staff create enthusiasm for practice, and promote scholarship of practice of the patient side, or at the patient side. So they kind of don't forget about the little people, and they do recognize you for the work that you have done. That's the person that see that you are such a good nurse aide and so attentive, that encourages you to go on to nursing school and try to do things to help motivate you and get you there. You know, they willing to work with your schedule so that you're able to go to school successfully. So transformational leaders are, I think, the ideal leader. So I'm gonna move on to the motivational theories. Now, as you can see at the top, these are the motivational theories. And in the motivational theories, sorry about that, trying to adjust this little thing here. It's been a time here I'm sorry, y'all. Trying to get these things set up and utilizing something else other than what I planned on. But the motivational theories, they have the hierarchy of needs, the two-factor theory, the expectancy theory, and the OB modification, and that has to do with behavior. And OB modification, it has to do with behavior. So we'll move to the next slide where they begin to explain these hierarchy of needs. That's the motivational theory, and anytime you hear hierarchy of needs, you know that involves Maslow. He is the father of developing the theory of motivation, and it actually was first published in 1943. People are motivated by a hierarchy of human needs, beginning with physiologic needs and then progressing to safety, social esteem, and self-actualization. And I would really look into that, because a lot of your NCLEX questions, they are based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what I do know, if it's not a behavior thing involved, then it's probably not Maslow's. A lot of the things that involve behavior changes include Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So again, look at these boxes. Let me see, leadership theory, and let me see where motivational theory is. The motivational theories are continued in a box. They all together for real. They take over several pages, because on page 9 we have the leadership theories, and we have those three, the trait, styles theory, situational contingency, all together. And then the transformational theory begins on page 10 over to 11. And you know that OB modification, that's organizational behavior modifications, is what that stands for. So then you have the two-factor theory, and again, that is located in that box on page 10 in your book. So you can read that theory, and that's the two-factor theory, and it's by Hellsberg, 1991. That's who accredited with developing the two-factor theory of motivation. So it was first published in 1968. So refer to the box to look at the key idea and application to practice, because in that key idea, individuals perceive needs influence their behavior. In the work setting, this motivated behavior is increased if a person perceives a positive relationship between effort and performance. So again, look at box on page 10 in your book. And last is that OB modification, and again, that is our organizational behavior modification is what the OB stands for, is OB mod. So that's by Luthans rather, from 2008. That's the person that's been accredited with establishing the Foundation for Organizational Behavior Modification, and it's based on Skinner's work. And if you remember from your psychology classes, B.F. Skinner, I think that was the one that had the Pavlov's dog, where he would have the collar around the dog's neck and would shock them in order to get them to eventually conform to what it is he wanted them to do. After they learned that if they did this and they shocked them, and after a while they didn't want to be shocked no more. But I feel like with that theory, after a while, if you don't keep doing the same thing and you stop doing it, the person will eventually go back to their old behaviors. And that's under that OB modification theory by Luthans, Luthans. And again, he has that theory based on B.F. Skinner's work on operant conditioning. So next is our complexity theory, and I have to adjust this a little bit because it's a little wordy. So the complexity science promotes the idea that the world is full of systems that interact and adapt through relationships. And then it says nurses must be flexible and dynamic to be in tune with the ever-changing systems of people, healthcare, public policy, and human relationships. So in the complexity science users, people who use complexity science, they develop networks. And in the development of networks, you can find that in your book on page 12. They have a little head, and they got a research perspective box at the beginning of page 12. And just to the right of that, it has the develop networks, encourage non-hierarchical, mean bottom-up interaction among workers. Again, not forgetting about the the person that's on the lower end of the totem pole, letting them know that they are important and they are not forgot about. And it become a leadership tag. And that's one of the things I need you to focus on, because I'm sure you have a question on your exam about become a leadership tag. And in the book it says that the term tag references the philosophic, patient-centered, and value-driven characteristics that give an organization its personality. It's the energy that it has. A tag is sometimes called an attractor or a hallmark of culture. It is similar to values, although clinical organizations often perform similar procedures and functions. An intangible sense that this particular organization has as a caring or good energy attractor differs from one where the sense is the focus on efficiency and cost only. The term tag refers to these distinctions. And then the last one is focus of emergence. So again, those are located on page 12 in your 6th edition book. And look at your conversion table if you have the 7th edition book to see where this information is located. And the last in this list is think systematically. And under think systematically, it is a little detail. It has 4 areas that's involved under thinking systematically. It says thinking of the big picture. It says balancing short-term and long-term objectives, recognizing the dynamic, complex, and interdependent nature of systems, and last, using measurable versus unmeasurable data systems. So again, that particular think systematically is the beginning of page 13 in your text. And I will leave that for you to read at your leisure. Last, well, it's not the last, because I think we got a couple of these theorists, but they want to focus on, the next focus is on Gardner's task of leadership, because we have Gardner's task of leadership, and then we have task by Blake, and Bly is how you pronounce the name, I'm sorry, and he has tasks of management and tasks of followership. And after we go through those, or I just briefly mention those, that will probably end this particular chapter 1. So in Gardner's task of leadership, there is a table, and that's what I was trying to say earlier, for lack of better words, trying to make sure that I had the right one, because you have tables and then you have boxes. And initially we was talking about box 1-1, but now we're talking about table 1-1, and it has Gardner's task of leading and managing as it applies to practice, management, and executive positions, as well as it has little small little writings to explain each one of these areas in general. So if you look at the table 1-1 at Gardner's task, it'll tell you, it lists each one of these tasks: envisioning goals, affirming values, motivating, managing, and achieving work unity. It also has developing trust, explaining, serving as a symbol, representing the group, and renewing. And each one of these, they break it down and they look at envisioning goals from a clinical position, from a management position, and from a executive position. So each one of those, that's how they are laid out in table 1-1. Again, you can go through and read also under that table. When that table finishes on page 15, then it starts to talk about these particular things in words. Now, the envisioning goals, as far as words, it does begin to explain Gardner's task of leadership on the bottom of page 13, just before you turn over the page to that table. So you can go through and read the meaning of each one of those. The developing trust, that starts on page 16, actually. Achieving workable unity and developing trust and explaining are all on page 16. And then serving as a symbol, representing the group, and renewing, they too are located on page 17. And it's not a lot of reading for you to do, so I would suggest, although the table condenses it, it looks at it in different positions in which a person is in, again, clinical, management, or executive. But if you just read the little boxes under each heading, it gives you a little information about each one of these categories in general. And there's the developing trust, explaining, serving as a symbol, representing the group, and renewing, and you can find those on page 17. Next is, and I'm sorry, this is terrible on this video, that's why it is important. I don't know why it shows up, it reflects so weakly on here. But next is Bly's task of management. And Bly's task of management you can find in box 1-3. As you can see, box 1-3, that's on page 18 in the 6th edition book. And again, look at the conversion table to tell you where to find it in the 7th edition book. So you can go through and read that box on Bly's task of management. And then the next one is box 1-4, which is Bly's task of followership. And it's 9 tasks in each one of those boxes. 9 tasks in the management box, and it's 9 in the task of followership box. They are located there. Now, up until this page, throughout this chapter, they have had different exercises that we can participate in. If you want to read those exercises, again, had we been in class, we will be doing these as class activities. However, because we are apart, it's a bit difficult to achieve the goal that was set with these tasks, these in-class activities. However, if you choose to do one of the exercises, just let me know and let me know what you got out of it, and I can go through my teach material that came with my 6th edition and give you the answers to those exercises if you have the time. I know you got a lot on your plate just as well, so and I know you got to get to the nitty-gritty and what's most important. And if you have time, I can give you the answers. And now we are at the conclusion of this particular chapter. And again, in this conclusion, it focuses on managing, leading, and following. And it looks at managing, leading, and following in complex organization. So when we are developing the leading, managing, and following skills and abilities that they talked about throughout this chapter, this will sustain professional nurses to adapt to and accept differences as a positive rather than a negative force in daily work life, building on gender strengths, generational values, gifts, and talents. We have cultural diversity, varying educational and experimental perspective, and a mobile and flexible workforce. All of that together is really rewarding. So it is also rewarding to be led in different ways, to experience the strength of a good manager, and to achieve positive outcomes as a follower, knowing that the team approach generated a successful work experience. So when you are looking in your book, it has a chapter checklist at the end. I'm gonna let that lean back now that you saw that was a conclusion. And again, in our tips for leading, managing, and following, we want to recall that leading and managing requires making decisions and taking collective action. If the situation is mostly known, refer to the task of management. If the situation is mostly unknown, refer to the task of leadership. To be effective in clinical care, nurses must be able to lead, manage, and follow. It is about the actions, not the titles. Examine how decisions get made. Some decisions are made through a formal hierarchy, others are autonomous. Knowing when and how to make clinical and organizational decisions adds to credibility early in your career. Remember that both contingency theory and complexity science approaches require knowledge about the context of care. Use this knowledge to examine the individual patient in the context of family and community. And last but not least, leadership, management, and organizational theories provide useful frameworks when faced with complex decisions. Select relevant theories to guide thoughtful reflection and to aid in advancing clinical and organizational outcomes. Thank you.